Welcome back, everyone, to OneStop History, your one-stop place for everything history here on YouTube. What was the Gilded Age in America? That is the question we're going to be answering today. The Gilded Age, quite simply put, is the time between the end of the Civil War and the beginning of the 20th century. So, in other words, the time period between 1865 and 1900. Now, how did that name, the Gilded Age, come about? Well, the name comes from an 1873 Mark Twain novel of the same name. And to be clear, it was basically a satire of New York and all of these rich business people that you saw there. So he was basically making fun of the wealthy people there. Because as you'll soon find out in this video, the Gilded Age was not all wealth and riches for most people. In fact, only a certain few people, the tycoons, as I'm going to refer to them in this video, did have wealth and riches during this time period. A couple major developments happened during the Gilded Age. First, it was the completion of railroads, specifically the Transcontinental Railroad. And that railroad, of course, connected the east and west coasts of the country, which made settling the west a lot easier, because before people would have to, among other ways, rent covered wagons and go overland that way. And now they could just hop on a train for a day or two and get to the west coast. It's probably a lot longer than that, actually. But it helped spread up the settlement of the middle part and western part of the country, as well as bring goods to those parts as well. A secondary thing that happened during this time was there was more industrialization in the United States at that point. So society continued to shift from one of agriculture to one of industry and factories. In fact, by 1900, 40% of Americans lived in cities. And industrialists and tycoons, as I call them, did build these factories for production in many industries. Steel, there were oil companies, many different industries, and these factories, of course, needed people to work in them. How did these tycoons get people for their factories to work in them? Well, a major source of that was immigration. So in this time period, and continuing into the first couple decades of the 20th century, there were millions of immigrants that came to America from around the world, mostly from Europe. Southern and Eastern and Northern Europe were the main ones at this time. There were quotas on certain Asian immigrant groups, as well as bans for certain Asian immigrant groups as well. So during this period, you're mostly talking about Europeans from Northern, Southern, and Eastern Europe. A little bit before this, you got the Irish, whose first wave came in the 1840s after the potato famine there. So you had a lot of immigrants coming for jobs in these factories. And related to that, there was political corruption, something known as political machines. Basically, they, among other things, helped immigrants out in exchange for their votes if those immigrants were eligible to vote. Also, political corruption did not just involve political machines, it involved these tycoons as well, engaging in unethical business practices. Some would say that taking over every single country and every single company in a given industry is an unethical business practice. It also happened on Wall Street as well with financiers. And during this time, you'll see huge wealth for these tycoons, as I call them. And these tycoons built insanely large mansions to live in. A lot of the largest homes in America were built during this time period. However, the area was not glamorous for everyone. In fact, most people did not have a lot of wealth in this time period. And this is because millions of people that immigrated to America for jobs ended up in cities such as New York City, Boston, Chicago, St. Louis, cities like that. And these cities were not prepared for this influx of people. A lot of the time when immigrants came to America, they would settle with people that came from their same country or the same area of Europe or wherever they came from. And a lot of the times, these people were put in tenements with terrible living conditions. So you a lot of the times had multiple families crammed into a single room. Sanitation, as you may guess, was terrible. Heating and lighting, well, the tenements were hot, and of course in the winter they were cold. Lighting really did not happen at this point, and then medical care was poor as well. You had a lot of people in these tenements dying from preventable diseases as well. And because most of these people were ending up in tenements once they came to the city, a lot of them, most of the working class, ended up living in poverty. Now, there is one person, Jacob Riis, that photographed tenement conditions in New York, which led the legislature to pass bills improving tenement conditions. He is, according to some historians, one of the first people in the progressive movement of the early 20th century. And that is a topic we'll be discussing in a future video. So as always, go ahead and like this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe and comment any topics you would like me to discuss in future videos. I will see you here next week for another video.